Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military with Summary channel. In this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about London because the most important updates are coming exactly from this area. I would like to remind you that yesterday there was a meeting between Merz, Starmer, Macron and Zelenskyy where they were talking about the situation in Ukraine, about the future of Ukraine of course, and they were discussing the peace plan that was proposed by the United States of America. The President of France made lots of very interesting statements. He said that we have lots of cards in our hands. Europe has declared Trump care cards in the Ukrainian settlement. Macron cites anti-Russian sanctions and the fact that Ukraine is still resisting among these Trump cards. Macron also seeks a new stage of negotiations, seeking a rapprochement between the positions of Europe, Ukraine and the United States. Zelenskyy stated that the European Union and Ukraine cannot manage without US support. Furthermore, Zelenskyy added that the US peace plan has been reduced from 28 to 20 points. The Americans want to find compromises, but there are none on territory, Zelenskyy said it. The talks in London focused on secured guarantees and the reconstruction of Ukraine. The meeting allowed work to continue on the US peace plan, the Macron administration added. Zelenskyy also made a statement. Today we discussed the joint diplomatic work with the US, agreed on a position on security guarantees, reconstruction and next steps. We also discussed continuing defense support. I thank the leaders for their willingness to support Ukraine on the path to peace. But the problem is, and this is probably the main problem, that this negotiation process was very short, and some sources asked a simple question: is everything is okay? Is everything is bad? Merz and Macron quickly left the British Prime Minister's residence where they met with Starmer and Zelenskyy, according to Sky News. Zelenskyy also left Downing Street shortly after the talks. All four declined to answer media questions after discussing steps and under Trump's peace plan. And this is the photo when Zelenskyy was leaving the Downing Street. Zelenskyy left Downing Street after talks with British Prime Minister Starmer without giving any press comments, Ukrainian media report. Furthermore, and few hours later, Zelenskyy gave several statements, but those were not the statements. That was something like official rejection of the US peace plan. Ukraine has no right to give up territory. He justifies this by saying that Kiev cannot give up territory under the constitution, international law and moral law. Partners are proposing that Ukraine exchange parts of the Donetsk region and the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant for territories the Russians have not yet captured. Things are not easy at the front right now, but there is no need to be pessimistic about territories the enemy hasn't yet captured. That doesn't mean they will. Europe and Ukraine are preparing their own peace plan, which will be handed over to the United States by Tuesday evening. So today, during the next several hours, the Americans are seeking a compromise in the negotiations, but that doesn't mean that Ukraine should cede territory. The issue of exchanging Ukrainian territory for security guarantees is not being considered. Trump has his own vision of ending the war, which differs from Ukraine's. US security guarantees for Ukraine must be approved by Congress. So today, Ukraine officially rejected the peace proposal of the President of the United States of America, which is obviously the beginning of the next stage of the special military operation. Basically, everything that happened between 2022 and let's say 9th of December of 2025 was a part of the special military operation. But it seems that after this rejection, we are entering a completely new phase of the war between the Russian Federation and Ukraine, and this is going to be a real war, not the special military operation. Another important thing today was published and reported by Keir Starmer. Europe is preparing to take 115 billion euro from Russia in the near future, according to the Times. British Prime Minister Starmer explained this by saying that negotiations to end the conflict had reached a critical stage. This issue was discussed at yesterday's meeting with Zelenskyy, Macron and Merz in London. The funds are intended to be sent to Ukraine to finance ongoing military operations for 2 years. Belgium, where the vast majority of frozen Russians assets are concentrated, has so far refused to take them. So we believe that the European countries will find a solution how to give this money to Ukrainians, and Ukraine will be able to fight with Russia for another 2 years. And this is going to be once again not the special military operation. This is going to be something much worse in comparison with what we've seen already. Now let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Zaporozhye direction. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians continued their offensive operation in the area of the city of Stepnogorsk. Today, if you remember yesterday, several pro-Russian sources reported that Russians managed to improve their position significantly. They captured the settlement of Stepnogorsk, and Russians captured huge territories in the fields between positions. Today, this information was also confirmed by neutral mappers. They also reported that Russians improved their positions in this area. As for the eastern Zaporozhye direction, the sources reported that Ukrainians counterattacked in the area of the settlement of Dobropolye and recaptured the southern part of the village. Now let's discuss the situation in the area of the city of Pokrovsk and in the area of the city of Mirnograd, where the Ukrainians continue suffering huge losses. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of very interesting updates. This morning, pro-Ukrainian sources stated that Ukrainians were forced to fall back completely from the southern part of the Mirnograd cauldron. So the territory to the south of the southern part of Mirnograd was completely captured by the armed forces of the Russian Federation. So we are talking about these territories, and the most important that this information was confirmed by pro-Ukrainian sources. Furthermore, and at the same time, the Russians continue their offensive operation from the southern part of the city in the direction of the northern part of the city. During the previous 12 hours, as you can see, the map was adjusted. So this is the situation, for example, by the end of the 7th of December, this is the 8th of December, and this is the beginning of the 9th of December. The Russians are moving forward in the northern direction with the purpose to capture the city of Mirnograd completely. At the same time, pro-Russian sources published this video, and this is a very important video to understand what exactly is happening on the territory of the city of Mirnograd. In this video, we can see how Ukrainians left one building probably under very heavy fire from the Russian side, and the Ukrainians were forced to change their positions for another building. But the problem is that Ukrainians were doing this during the daylight, so which means that the Russians saw the movements of Ukrainians in this area. And of course, the Russians followed the Ukrainians, and they managed to discover their Ukrainian new position. And when the Russians discovered the new temporary deployment point of the armed forces of Ukraine, they attacked this building with FAB, with aviation bomb. So this video shows us that Ukrainians are in a critical situation in this area without any chances for evacuation, without any chances to have good and protected positions. So they are always under very heavy fire, and obviously under such a pressure, Ukrainians will not be able to hold their positions for a very long period of time. A bit further in the northern direction, the Russians continue their offensive operation in the territory of the settlement of Rodinska. It seems that in coming days, the settlement would be captured by the Russians completely. At the same time, the Russians continue their offensive operation to the west of the settlements of Zapovedny and Dorozhny. Today, this information was confirmed by different neutral mappers. This is the situation by the end of the 8th of December, and this is the 9th of December. The Russians continue advancing along the railways, and the Russians are tasked to outflank the settlement of Belitska and then to take the settlement in pincers. The Russians will attack the settlement of Belitska from the northeast, from the village of Dorozhny, and the Russians most likely will continue offensive operation from Rodinsk in the same direction. So if Belitska falls, this is going to be a perfect foothold before moving further towards the settlement by the name of Dobropolye. And Dobropolye is the last city under control of the armed forces of Ukraine. We're talking about not just about the city, but the big city, more or less big city. If Dobropolye falls, then Ukrainians will not have such big towns and cities under control, just villages, almost until the settlement of Pavlograd or the city of Lazo, which is located several dozens of kilometers from the line of combat contact. Now let's move further. As for the Konstantinovka direction, small changes were recorded during the previous 24 hours. The Russians improved their positions in the area of the settlement of Verolubovka. This information was confirmed by neutral mappers, and Russians improved their positions in the southeastern part of the settlement by the name of Konstantinovka. So first, I would like to remind that several days ago, on the 7th of December, this report was confirmed by pro-Russian resources, and this morning this information was also partially confirmed by neutral mappers. Now let's talk about the city of Siversk. During the previous 24 hours, we received lots of important updates. As you can see, the map has been adjusted, but the map was adjusted under control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation based on the report that was published by pro-Ukrainian sources. So what's happened there? I would like to remind you that 3 days ago, we received a video from the area of the school number 1 from the western part of the city of Siversk. And here we could see how Ukrainians were attacking the Russian flag in the central or in the western part of the city. So this episode took place here. The next day, the pro-Ukrainian sources published a video where we could see how Ukrainians were attacking Russians through this territory, through this part of the settlement of Siversk in its western part. As a result of attack, the Russians were trying to cross the river of Bakhmutka, but Ukrainians attacked Russians exactly at this point. So, and yesterday we adjusted the map, let's say from the southern part of the city of Siversk towards the northern part of the settlement. So today, the pro-Ukrainian sources clarified the situation, and the pro-Ukrainian sources are saying that Russians attacked from the eastern part of the city of Siversk towards the western part. So based on this report, based on the yesterday's videos, we adjusted the map by coloring almost the entire territory of the city of Siversk under complete control of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Furthermore, today, several sources, pro-Ukrainian sources, published a very interesting article regarding the situation in the city. The Russian armed forces continue to drag their infantry into the city, and the situation is currently not developing in the best way, because Siversk is gradually passing into the hands of the Russian armed forces. Recently, a large number of fixations of the Russian infantry have been carried out, but at the same time, the pilots of defense forces are actively practicing on it. So the Ukrainians are saying that more and more Russians are entering the city of Siversk, and that currently Ukrainians control probably less than 20%, and most likely the city of Siversk would be captured by the Russian forces in coming hours. As for the Kupiansk direction, during the previous 24 hours, we also received lots of very interesting updates. As you can see, the map has been adjusted significantly in Ukrainian favor. So everything started several days ago. Everything started before the meeting between Zelenskyy and Macron, when he said that Ukrainians control almost the entire western part of the city of Kupiansk. So this is the situation by the end of the 4th of December of 2025. The next day, we received this video where we could see how Ukrainians were moving almost in the central part of the city of Kupiansk on the Ukrainian side of the river Oskol. This moment, this episode was geolocated. This is exactly the place where Ukrainians were moving. Based on this video, we adjusted the map. The next day, several neutral mappers confirmed that Ukrainians also improved their positions in the area of the Yubileyny micro district. The next day, on the 7th of December, we received the video from the eastern bank of the river Oskol in the area of the Zaskolye micro district. Here we can see how Russians were attacking positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in this area. On the 8th of December, we haven't received anything, but on the 9th of December, by the morning, we received another batch of changes. According to them, the Russians lost control almost over every single square kilometer on the western bank of the river Oskol. The Ukrainians are counter-attacking and continue pushing forward. Furthermore, we adjusted the map, as you can see, according to different neutral mappers, just to show the approximate line of combat contact. But another video, and probably there was another video, a very important video published also during the previous night, and this is the video we're talking about. In this video, we can see how Russians were attacking with FPV drones positions of the armed forces of Ukraine through the northern part of the city of Kupiansk. There are lots of episodes of FPV drone attacks, and one of the episodes was geolocated exactly at this point. We haven't adjusted the map in this area because, telling the truth, we don't know for sure how exactly to adjust. But we are waiting waiting for additional updates, but of course I would like to point to attention that most likely in coming days something like this could be colored back in Ukrainian favor, because we have a geolocation from almost the river of Oskol, and this is a very important video, that shows that Russians are about to lose completely their positions on the Ukrainian side of the river of Oskol, and the Russians are about to fall back on the Russian side towards the settlement of Kucherevka and Petropavlovka. So reports that Ukrainians launched a very powerful counteroffensive operation was true, and the Ukrainians continue their counteroffensive with the purpose to restore complete control over at least the western bank of the river of Oskol. Furthermore, today several pro-Russian sources published this video from the area of the Pechenegi water reservoir. I would like to remind you that several days ago the Russians destroyed this bridge, trying to reduce the Ukrainian logistic capabilities, and today the Russian sources published this video where we can see how exactly the Russians were attacking this territory with Tornado S missile. As a result of attack, the pontoon bridge in this area was completely destroyed. And that's it for the short video. Military with Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.